share my screen?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. Today we have Hillary Black. MSW is a globally recognized operational talent executive and dynamic thought leader with 25 plus years experience. As a talent and brand advocate, recruiting lead and coach, Hillary specializes in recruiting and leadership development and coaching through communicating best practices through the lens of human behavior and relationship building. Hillary, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? I'm going to put it in present view. If everyone could just tell me what they currently see.
We see your screen.
Just the
Know your story, know your worth in black and white.
Okay, perfect. So it looks like a presentation to you?
Yes.
Okay, and when I move it, do you see me move it or no?
I do. I saw that.
Let me move it. And do you see this?
I see your URL bar at the top also.
Can you see these notes at all or no?
I do not see your notes. It's black.
Perfect. Okay. So hi, everyone. Thank you for being patient as I am my story is that I am not a perfect human being. I come with all sorts of, challenges, and I am a unique, but not unique at all. I'm unique in the sense that I'm Hillary Black, and I'm not unique in that I am not perfect. So I just wanted to say that because it's a very nerve-wracking thing whenever I share, but at the same time, it's something that I love to do. So it's kind of challenging at some point, but I love doing it. So a little bit about my background, which I think is really important, is my story started a long time ago. I was a wannabe copywriter. I couldn't hack it. I had a really bad stomach ache through most of it. I decided to help people that were creatives, talent in the advertising industry who wanted to do something with their career. And so I gave up my copywriting wannabe and I decided to help people to do it instead. And from that, let's fast forward. I did really well at it, but in my late 30s, I felt like something was missing. And as a girl who had lost their mom early in life, for me, I decided to go back to school and get my master's in social work. And I thought that I wanted to work with kids in bereavement. Fast forward that I did not want to work with kids dealing with bereavement, nor did I want to work as a social worker. But I did love the aspects of what social workers do. So what I did was that I got my degree anyway, because I felt like I utilize it in life all the time. And I'm utilizing it every day through my practice. And just to keep moving along, in that practice, what I did was I became a partner in my business. And then about a year, I would say a year or two ago, I started to get a little anxious. My story is that money and stability for me needs to be consistent. And I have 2 young children now. I am a cancer thriver. Lots of things happened to me. And I felt like I needed to spread my wings. And so I did. And in the last 4 months, I came on board to WPP as both an executive recruiter on the WPP side, along with leadership development and coaching. And so my story throughout 30 years had shifted lots of different ways, but it stayed still for a long period of time. But I kept really, really working on my story and really letting people know that I want my story to change and to evolve over time. And so it's okay if you stay one place sometimes. It's okay if you're not necessarily moving, but as long as you continue to move by sharing your story, if that makes any sense, and you tell people about it, you're going on LinkedIn, you're sharing different information, and we'll talk about all of those things today, then I feel like your story will evolve over time. And the things that you want to come to fruition will come to fruition. So today we're going to talk about being aware of what story you're actually telling yourself, imposter syndrome versus channeling your inner champion, how different ways to record your achievements, different ways in which you're telling yourself this isn't going to happen or this is going to happen. How do you really say, okay, that I have been a great aspect to my team, and your worth, making sure you do the right research, making sure you have evidence to support your worth, techniques for keeping your cool when you feel like you just like aren't going to be able to handle it, or you're frustrated, or you're angry, or you're really just sensitive. I'm extremely sensitive and like easily teary, and that's okay to cry. I feel like it's no, like my feeling, if you have to cry, you cry. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the story that we want to share gets out, so that however it gets out, that it gets out. And embracing the value of humility, making sure it's not lost in translation, and just keep your eye on the prize. So let me go back. Hold on one second. I fast forwarded too many times. So one of the things that I always share that I think is super duper important, and I'm just going to I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So you'll have to forgive me that I do keep my notes here. So take what you want and leave the rest. What I say is not the gospel. It's just the things that I've learned along the way. So if these are things that are important to you, that you think you can hook onto, take it. And then there's going to be things that you're going to be like, nah, I don't necessarily agree with Hillary here. So like, just don't go with it. Okay. So I just want to do a quick check-in. I'm going to post, hold on one sec. Oh, why does this keep happening to me? Hold on, everyone. I'm going to open up the chat. And if you could do me a favor, if you could share in the chat where you are in your career today and what you're looking to get at. So let's start with where you are in your career today. Are you like freelance? Are you full-time? Are you looking for, to negotiate? Right now you're in the middle of a negotiation, looking for a raise, review anxiety. Where can you share a little bit more if there's anybody who's willing? And you could
You want it in the chat or conversational?
say a conversation, absolutely. Or you could throw it in the chat to me privately if you don't feel comfortable, or you could throw it in the chat anyway, verbally, non-verbally.
I think the group knows where I'm at. I am in the second chapter of my career. I took a step back to take a step up at home. And so I am trying to get back out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I took a step, say that again. I took a step back to take a step up.
At home, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Do you write that? Have you ever written that down?
It's written down for sure. Yeah, I've seen it. I heard it. I loved it. I own it. I put it out there because I think it's so relevant.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, thank you for that. I needed to hear that too. Because I feel like I've taken a little bit of a step back in some ways. Like I had 7 people that I were responsible for their healthcare and all these things. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I don't have anybody that reports to me. So I took a step back to take a step up. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Diana, in a career transition, looking for full-time opportunity. I have 20 years experience driving growth for early stage companies, revenue and reach, looking to do this for a purpose-first company tied to a mission that supports women in a business or mothers in the workplace. Currently holding my former employer accountable for pregnancy termination. So, wow. So that's like, Diana. So thank you for being here and for sharing your story and sharing that. It's important. And also I would like everyone to email me after, because so far the things that I'm hearing are things that I can help with, especially Diana, part of your story. There's some information there that I could be of service to you for. So what are you looking to get out of today?
I think for me, Hillary, so I'm currently in a 3rd career transition. I left corporate HR last summer. But previous to that, I was in advertising for 10 years as an account manager. And now I just soft launched a coaching practice in January. So I think thank you, as a lot of coaches struggle with is knowing your worth. And it's the money side that is, a constant struggle. And so I think I know my story, and I know why I'm meant to do this. Attaching a price to it is a struggle. So I'm very excited for today.
Okay, good. All right. Well, and we could talk specifically. And again, Julie, reach out to me privately, because I too had to go through that. And I realized that while there was a sliding scale, that I had to not forget all of those years prior, that those play into the dollar amount that my worth was today. And we'll talk about that. Okay. So just moving along a little bit, just so everybody's aware. Okay. So what self-worth and money stories are you telling yourself? So it's really important that we realize right now, like, are we telling ourselves something that's negative? Are we telling ourselves something positive? What are we walking in with right now, right? Are your stories about, are they supportive or are they harmful to you? And like, do they bring you anxiety? So I think it really, I mean, for me, it depends on each thing. Like, asking yourself, who's helped shape the story? Have you shaped this story for yourself? Has somebody else shaped the story for yourself? Has the industry created barriers for you? So in other words, are you really worth more, but somebody has said this, or has an actual industry shaped it for you already? And I think when you start to think to yourself, okay, I know that I'm worth X, but everyone else is making Y. I don't really care what everyone else is making. I really don't care. It's like, if for those of you that have nieces, nephews, or children, you know, it's like, well, so-and-so's doing, well, I don't care what so-and-so's doing. What are you doing in your house? Your house works differently than every other house works, right? The way that you treat your friends and somebody else treats their friends, like, this is your time and this is your story, and nobody else can take that away from you. And so it's really important that if you're coming with somebody who said, you're going to ask for that, really? Well, you don't really have that much experience and you really haven't done it that long. Yes, that's my voice, by the way, telling me that. Yes, but you also have 25 years of doing it when you practiced it every single day, when you had to talk to a candidate and pick them up off the floor, or they had a family of 5 and they didn't know how to feed their children and they didn't know what to do. And they left the phone call feeling so much better. Can I do it? Yeah, I could do it. Okay. So it's also this tape. So I want you to do something else. When you're talking about your money stories, if you're creating your own story and it's a negative story, I want you to think of naming it and taming it. Okay. So if you have a story and it's telling you, I'm not worth X, I'm really worth Y, I want you to name that. That's so-and-so telling you that, Hillary. That's so-and-so telling you that, Ashley. That's so-and-so telling you that, Julie. Like, that's not the truth. That is your saboteur that's speaking to you. Okay. And maybe there's some value in that information, right? There's actual clarity and information, but information is not necessarily what is the real thing. It's just information. That's all it is. It doesn't define who you are. And if it brings you, if it empowers you, if the story empowers you, then that's a great thing. So does your story sound or look like this? And I'm going to read them to you. They only promoted me because they needed to fill the vacancy fast. I don't deserve a raise, or I don't deserve to make that much. I'm probably not worth that much. I'll never get the job or the client or the coaching client. You blame yourself for failed pitches or missed timelines. Your mistakes often annihilate all of your accomplishments. So one mistake makes you bye-bye. You're critical in not owning your special sauce. You're too much, to this or to that. That's me. If things go right, maybe you, oh, that's a little bit of an edit there. Even wonder, when will they find out that I'm a fraud? And even me having an error in this, going back to my designer and not wanting to kill her for being even, right? And being like, I'm a fraud. So when are they going to find out I'm a fraud? Well, when we think that we're not good at what we do, or that they think we're a fraud, that's assuming that all the people that have hired us to do something, that they're frauds, that they don't know what they're doing. But in essence, they know exactly what they're doing when they brought us on. Okay. So I want you to remember that these are all different, and I'm going to send you the deck so you're going to have it, so that because it's really important to remember these saboteur conversations that you have with yourself. And it's really important the minute you start to talk really negative about it and your story is negative, that you talk back to it. If your story is positive, then you just do more of that. That's all. It's changing the tape in your head. So what self-worth and money stories are you telling yourself? Are they supportive? Are they harmful? Do they bring, oh, we already did that, right? Sorry, everybody. Okay. And could it sound like this? I'm worthy and I'm worth it. I'm valuable because I bring my unique experience to the table. I see myself as an asset and I'm confident in my worth. I'm talented and I can get any role that is the right fit for me. I mean, can you imagine if we just changed the tape to this? How beautiful and remarkable it would be if all of us thought this way. You may see your mistakes as learning moments. You know your strengths and acknowledge your uniqueness and your superpowers. And you know you have overcome great challenges and learned a lot from each scenario. So here's the thing. I very often live in the negative saboteur way. It's who I am. I grew up with, knowing our story is knowing also who we grew up with. How many of you grew up with a parent that was a negative or a negative positive parent? Yes, no, thumbs up if you did. Okay. So I grew up with a parent, an attorney. So I was always on the stand. And part of my story is that everything was a negative positive. So in other words, so they're only going to give you that, but you're worth this. Oh, it was never, oh my God, that's incredible. I'm so happy for you. And they were beyond happy for me. I know that they were, but they were just, these people in our lives are so worried about us being hurt sometimes. And some of those people are ourselves, right? Are so worried that the negative comes in first to protect ourselves. We have to try to stop protecting ourselves from the other shoe dropping, because that's what happens a lot of the time. The other shoe, we can't worry about it dropping. Trust me, I've had so many shoes dropping. It doesn't help me to know when it's going to drop. And it doesn't help me to know if it's going to drop, because I'd rather all the shoes that fit. So why spend the time on focusing on that? And it is much easier said than done. I know that better than anybody. I truly, truly do. I'm telling you, I've been through lots of obstacles, whether it be cancer, whether it be not making any money, all these different things, parental loss as an early child. And I promise you that shoe is going to drop sometimes. It just is. It's life. Life has tons of them. But then if I were to change that tape to these things, oh my God, even just one day. And if we practice it on a regular basis, we're going to get better and better at it, especially for those really anxiety-ridden moments when it gets really hard. So the imposter syndrome versus channeling your inner champion. So who believes that they're not as good as they are as they present themselves? Whose story is, I'm not as, I'm good at what I do, but I could be better. Does anybody have a saboteur on? Okay, thank you. Some people do, some people don't. For those of you who don't have that saboteur, oh my God, I am just madly in love with you, because and I'm in love with everyone. But the truth is, the people that don't have that, I want to learn more about how you build that thing, because that is the hardest thing to build up. It is so challenging not to have a saboteur on your shoulder. My saboteur is constantly in my ear of like, you got to know more, you got to know this, you got to lose this much weight, you got to blah, 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 blah. And it just does, it's never ending. So I'd love to hear in the chat a little bit from everybody, or not in the chat, just live. Tell me a little bit about your saboteur and what that story tells you. Don't all come at once.
I'll start.
Okay.
So I was raised to be self-sufficient and independent. And I think that has hurt me, because I've sort of taken it to the extreme, to the extent that I have a really hard time asking other people for help, because like you, I think, oh, I've got to figure this out by myself. And if I can't figure it out by myself, then I think I am at fault or damaged if I can't do that, which is ridiculous when I say it out loud. But self-sufficiency is great, but when it's sort of twisted, it's not so great. So I definitely am looking at these bullet points, and it's definitely resonating with me when that negative stuff starts to creep in.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share it, Amy. And it's so hard. And when you say it out loud, or we've heard this before, would you say that to your friend? Would you say that to your daughter? Would you say that to this person? No, you would never speak to them like that, ever. And we think about how sufficient we all are, right? We are all self-sufficient. We are all, doing really well. And as I'm saying it, I'm like, well, you have to look at your slides, or you have to do this, or you couldn't keep up the pace, or they're probably thinking they've had better people speak. I cannot tell you how many saboteur thoughts have gone through my head from the beginning of this to the end. And I have to also be gentle with myself. We have to be gentle with ourselves. That's the most important thing, is to say, you know what, you just do your best. What did I tell my daughter today when she went out to get her test? This ridiculous third grade test during COVID that they're making them take at the public schools. I said, I don't care what you get. I just care that you take your time and you just literally take your time. That's all I said. I don't care what grade you get. And am I saying that to myself? Am I being gentle with myself? Well, if you don't get this salary or you don't get this, as long as you ask for it in a humble way, but with confidence, and that you ask for what you feel you've earned, and you respect yourself and you respect, because it's about respecting ourselves. Or are you each respecting yourself in your process and knowing that part of your story that says, you know what, I don't have to ask for permission, or I don't have to feel like, oh my God, thank you so much for giving this to me. You're so, oh God, thank God you gave it to me. Like that's no, 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 no. Like, first of all, none of you would all be here either if you weren't constantly trying to evolve as human beings, right? That's the best thing about people that always, I feel like, are doing workshops. It's like, we're sitting here learning. We're constantly trying to learn. We're constantly trying to be better human beings and evolve. So I think it's so important. Does anybody else, anything else they wanted to add about the symptoms of downplaying your accomplishments, or people pleasing, or striving for perfection?
I think sometimes it's different to distinguish between the saboteur and our inner monologue in general, right?
Yes.
It's really hard to even know that you're sabotaging yourself when you're just so used to, we're definitely in a movement right now where I think we're respecting ourselves a lot more and we're being heard more often. And so, like you said, if we just start talking to ourselves the same way we talk to our daughters and our sons and our family and people we love, it changes it changes the narrative.
Changes the narrative. Exactly. It's the narrative change. It's the most important thing. But I'll tell you I will say what's a little more than the narrative, the consistency.
Mhm.
Because you could change the narrative and you could say it once, but if we're not consistent, that's my biggest problem, is I'm not consistent enough with it.
Yeah.
I teach people how to be consistent with it all the time, but I'm not consistent enough with it myself. I have to be honest, because the more think about it as a habit, right? If we do something for if I were to go jogging for 3 weeks straight right now, even if I just did a minute walk, 2-minute jog, or I walked 3 weeks straight for 5 days a week, I guarantee you I'm going to want to jog or walk the next day. When I walk, which I did this morning, only to see my best friend, if I did that one day, once a week, I don't really want to go except to see her. It's not for me. I don't really want to get up. I'm tired. So it's building up a practice, and that practice we have to be our practice. We have to become the most important, because if we're not, then we're not giving that out. We're not giving that out. And I will say this one thing I learned from going through cancer is that I thought it was that I was going to want to travel the world, or I was going to want to have these, but really at the end of the day, it was about fulfilling different things within my current life that were actually happening. It wasn't about seeing the world, or it was about just being at peace with my relationships. And one of those relationships was myself. Can I be at peace with myself if I'm beating myself up? I want to say beating the shit out of myself, because seriously, sometimes I can beat the shit out of myself. I really can. I could be really mean, and it's not okay. It's not cool. So I just want to make sure that we are really, and I love, making sure we learn the narrative part is so important, Francine. Thank you. So I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. Maya Angelou. So if she's everybody, not I mean, everybody has some sense of what's happening. Hopefully Julie's okay. She's having a coughing fit. Julie, let us know that you're okay when you're done. And the inner champion, right? These are the things that make us feel better. She's good, thank God. Okay. It's important. I would love for everyone to keep a list, starting today. I would really say, like, start keeping a list of the things that make you feel really good about yourself. What are the things that make you feel like, okay, I'm good at, or the things that you want to be doing, and this is why you could be doing it, or the things, the raise you want to make, and this is why you feel you deserve this raise. Like when I went to go get my master's in social work, one of the things we learned was an evidence for and an evidence against list. And the list was to support or to negate negative thoughts. So let's say, Ashley, what's something that's kind of, if I could put you on the spot, is there something that's like a negative thought that you have that like is a roller coaster thought often that keeps coming in to stop you from something you want to do?
Sure. um, I mean, I think it's that I can never follow through on anything. Like I have all these great ideas. I attend seminars. I'm like, you know, open to it, but I don't have a consistent routine and follow through and stuff.
So thank you for that. I appreciate it because that's a good one. I have a similar one. Thank you for reminding me of it. So, so here's what I would say is we need to put that thought on a paper, right? And you're saying I never follow through. I think that if you put then the evidence to support that thought and the evidence against it, right? The evidence to support the thought is going to be it's not going to be that long. The evidence to go against it is going to be very big. So in other words, let's say mine would be, well, I go to all these webinars or I go to all these sessions and I learn a lot, but I never do anything with them. Okay, well, I never do anything with them. If you think about it, I never do anything that actually like I could maybe hone in on. Like maybe you're looking for something too much of a fine point to say, oh, I went to know your story, know your worth, and I never did X, Y, and Z. We have to look at the bigger picture. Okay. I'm going to all of these different workshops and eventually they're little things that are coming in. They're all little pieces that are kind of plugging in that I'm taking so that when I have a meeting or I have a conversation with somebody coming up, there are things that I guarantee you that you're utilizing throughout your week, throughout your month, throughout your year, just because you're not necessarily following through. I threw out all my books, by the way, because I had bought 50 books of which I could not get through any of them. And it was ridiculous. All it was a reminder of what I wasn't following through on. So for me, it was to say, just pick one book. For you, I would say, here's all these different things I'm going to. I'm taking it all in. It's a sponge. Just because I'm maybe not keeping the list or maybe I'm not doing this, I'm taking in information. That's a lot. And that is going to be utilized at some point. I feel that we look so hard to beat ourselves up that we don't look for the good. We look immediately for the bad. So your inner champion would say, oh my God, how amazing that you go to make time for all these workshops. And if my saboteur would say, well, something else to that, right? And then I would say, okay, well, thank God I go to these workshops because they're all things that are investments in my life. Not necessarily my career, but I'm listening to people that might give me something. And Ashley, you could do a workshop. We could all do workshops teaching each other about our life experience of what things that we've learned. And you've heard a lot of what I'm saying before. It's just, again, the repetition, which helps us. And to my point, the more workshops you go to, or the more things that you go to that you like, Ashley, that you're choosing for yourself because they're things that resonate with you. So just remember that, okay? When you're trying to like, beat yourself up a bit about things like that. So how can we own our story and mute the imposter syndrome? So we talked a little bit about this before. We really want to make sure we name it and we tame it. So if it's, mine is constantly saying, you're not good enough. It's always saying you're not good enough. Or mine says you don't have enough experience. That's actually a big one for me. Does anybody have one that they would name?
I think the label that I have of stay-at-home mom, I think, first of all, let's get rid of that because I didn't think I stayed home one day during this whole time, right? But the limitations that are associated with that, I think are not doing me any favors.
Okay, agreed. Did you hear that LinkedIn is putting working mom as a job, a career?
I heard.
And I always ask, I've changed my saying to people, if I talk to a man or a woman, they're home. Are they working as a mother? Are they working as a father? I don't say, are they at home?
Yeah.
Because I think that that's what culture has brought up so
Right.
strong, is that it's about, oh, you're home,
Mhm.
right? What are you doing at home? But to me, I think that being a stay-at-home mom is like, I mean, you're working, I couldn't as a human being. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. That is something that I could not have managed. Like being alone with my children, I needed like a third party to just make sure that we all managed to like get through the day. Like, and I'm not kidding. And that's my saboteur is like, you're not a good enough mom because you couldn't stay home with the kids. Right. So it's interesting how it could flip.
Right.
So if you name it, right, and you just say, okay, but then when it comes in, you have to say, oh, that's my saboteur. That's the imposter shit. I'm not, excuse my language. I'm sorry. I know this is taped. I apologize. That's my imposter. That's happening again. I can't have that. So really, you have to talk back to it. If you don't talk back to it, it's coming, constantly going to keep coming. It's not going to stop. I had a therapist years ago. He used to tell me, I thought he was ridiculous. He used to tell me to hit my hands over and over again. Sure enough, one of the greatest therapeutic things right now is called tapping. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it's a really,
I've heard of, yeah, I've heard of it as like just calming yourself down, right?
how you could say, so for me, if I was fearing not having enough time, right, because of my diagnosis, you have enough time. You have enough time. It looks absolutely ridiculous, but I have enough time. I have enough time. It actually relaxes me. But if I say, if you could also hit yourself and say, I was a working mother. I was a working mother. I was a working mother. If you said it enough, it sounds different than I was a stay-at-home mom, or
Right.
I wasn't, or I was being a mom. I was working. I was working. So just talk back to it.
Yeah.
So also, I think it's important, again, everyone to start, if you can. For me, I would want to start it and then I wouldn't follow through with it, Ashley. So hear me out for a second. Even if you just do it when we hang up today, even if you write one thing down, just one thing, which is like, I showed up. One thing, I showed up. That's it. Like just and then keep it somewhere nearby. And then like every time you remember to write down another accomplishment. But if you're genuinely going towards a goal and you want your story to really progress, I recommend that the accomplishment thing will help you to feel better when the saboteur says, I can't charge X because I don't have that many years of experience, or I can't get this because I was working at home with my children versus working at an office with other children. Just being funny for a minute. But my point is that if we just remind ourselves of our accomplishments and we really hone in on them, I think it will provide for evidence for you to feel better about that stuff when you go ahead and you ask for it, because you're going to ask for it. So I keep a record of all the nice things that people say to me because I need a reminder. So if somebody sends me a really nice email, now Doreen has sent me really nice things, but sometimes they're in Teams and I can't save it. So that's a problem. But I do keep a reminder of any email that comes my way over the years. And it's basically a kind email box. It just says kind words or whatever you want to label it. And it could be from, for the professional stuff, you could keep it as a client, response compliments, or just a compliment email box. On the day when you're feeling like the saboteur is speaking loud, when your story feels like it's not as strong as it needs to be, definitely keep that email, create a mailbox. This is something you could do today. This is one thing you could do even while I'm talking. You just go on the mailbox, whatever. Easy peasy to do. And every time someone sends me something, I just flush it right in. And I told somebody about it at work and she was like, oh my God, I love that. Nobody ever says thank you to her. Nobody ever says anything to this woman on one of my other groups. And I finally said thank you to her. And she's like, oh my God, and I told her that I have this kind mailbox. She's like, I want to save a kind. I want one too. I need one. Nobody ever says thank you to me. Nobody ever says, how was your weekend? So it's just a nice way to just remind yourself of like, that you're appreciated. And if we're not validated sometimes, because I know I have an issue with being validated, I don't feel like I'm validated enough, that I need those pats on the back a lot of the time. So talk to your cheerleaders. I think it's also another thing you could do. This is like, these are the easy tasks today, or even while I'm talking again, you could write down one cheerleader that you have, or two cheerleaders, or three people that you know you can turn to when you in your, maybe somebody that's in your profession doing what you're doing, like the coaching thing, Julie, you were saying, is there someone else like you could speak to? Or maybe Amy, if you're like trying to take it all on, maybe there's somebody who could say like, hold up for a minute, you know, there's always somebody that can kind of like speak to you and remind you, like, I have so many people who make me feel better about myself than I do sometimes about myself. So like, just your cheerleaders are really important. This is something that someone on my team loves to do at Career Happy. They're always about meditating. They do sound bowl healing. They do all of these things. I am a true believer that for me, it's comedy. If somebody's funny or tells me a joke, that's my thing. I have been doing some meditation lately or just sitting still and saying, like, that's not your story. That's your saboteur telling you that you're not, like, right before you go into a meeting or right before you're about to tell them what you want, what your cost is, right? Or right before you're about to go into an interview, like, what's your intention? So like that meditation moment could be it could be 30 seconds of you just like closing your eyes and saying like, you got this. Like, you don't have to worry about this. You have X amount of years of like hustling, like no matter where you hustled, like you could do this. And it's just a gentle thing to yourself that you could do. So I think it's also important if everybody could just put in or tell me, and if you haven't yet, I haven't even looked at the chat. If there's 31 chat messages and I have not even seen the chat. Thank you very much, everyone. Ah, I love it.
We all support your shitting on it.
Exactly. There's a lot of shit in there.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, so here we go. I want everybody to either say in the chat or to tell me, okay, what you feel your affirmation or your mantra could be. So because we all need something. So when and again, a lot of this stuff for me feels so hokey. I can't even tell you how hokey it feels like to me, but it is so important because in that moment, like this new boss that I have to somehow, I wasn't hired by him. I'm worried, right? Is he gonna see the value in me? I don't have 30 years of leadership coaching. I have years of building I have different experience. How am I, and yes, it makes sense when everyone else tells me why I'm valuable. So I am worthy and I am 100% resilient. I am one of the most resilient people I know. But why do I have such a hard time? I do enough. I have enough. I am enough. I love it, Ashley. Thank you. That's brilliant. And it's true. I'm sure, especially, yes. I could do hard things. That's a saying, Amy, in our house. We tell the Modlins do hard things. We get through hard things too. Everything I've experienced up until this point was for a reason. Diana, thank you. I think that's so important. I love that. I'm worth it. Yep. Susan, yep, 100%. I am resilient. Doreen, you are 100% resilient. I'm ready to jump back in. Francine, you already have jumped back in. Okay, so one of the things, and I think these are important that we share them with each other. And one of the reasons we share them with each other is so that we can see, like for me, Diana said, everything I've experienced up until this point was for a reason. That one makes me want to cry. And the reason it makes me want to cry is because I keep trying to figure out, like, when are they going to figure out, like, I keep saying, why me? Why did I get chosen? Like, what's going to, and people say, well, this, and this, but like, also we need to figure out that these things that we do are for a reason. All the things we've done were for a reason. Like Francine's, I will never go back and say, I wish I worked with my children at home. I wish I was, that's how I won't, because I couldn't have handled it. And I'm not good under pressure in that way, right? And you may have been somebody who would have gone back and said, oh, I wish I did that, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's so interesting about those reasons and the things that we go through and the stories we tell ourselves, but these are just so beautiful. And I am where I should be right at this moment. this minute. Right, Doreen, it's so true. And it's the good, the bad, and the ugly for a reason. It's all teaching me something I'll use at some point in my life. Diana, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's so, so true and so important. And I hope we all remember these things. So hold on one second. I'm going to just move this away from myself. She remembered who she was and the game changed. So I just think that's a really important, it's one of my favorite quotes. It's like, do we know our story enough that we actually consistently talk about it with ourselves and have moments with ourselves where we could say, like, I'm doing this for a reason. Like, first of all, I feel like completely empowered by all of you today because you're sharing with me these stories and these feelings and you're being vulnerable and authentic, and it's making me feel more confident. It's making me feel like I have a little bit more to tell. So I just want to say that. So let's get knowing your worth. So reduce your anxiety through research and preparation. So for me, my story I'm going to share. I went from I was on contingency my whole life. I never made a salary. I made 35 grand draw forever. I never made a salary until I became a boss, and then I never made anything. And all I made was whatever I chose to put into it. So I didn't know how to really evaluate my worth, except to know that, okay, a recruiter's this, a coach does this. So I just said, like, what do I need to live a great life? Like, that's what I ended up researching. It was like, that's what I need to know. And then I could put it against something else, because I don't want to make what's not going to make me feel good either. So I really wanted a combination of both. I didn't want just what the market was making. I wanted what the market was saying, maybe, but then also what's going to make me really feel good. And, Cindy Gallup says this thing where she says, ask for as much as possible until the point where you feel like you're going to break out giggling, like, you're going to laugh, it was just great. And it just made me, so I sort of did. I asked for that. I didn't get what I wanted, but I certainly asked for it. And I was uncomfortable. I didn't giggle, but I was uncomfortable. So the number should make you wildly uncomfortable. Well, it didn't make me wildly. I wish it made me wildly uncomfortable, but it definitely made me uncomfortable. So
That's true, by the way. That is so, like, I was having this conversation with my husband because I think that you wrote something that included that, and I was having this conversation, and he's kind of at this crossroads where he's looking to make a move and, discussing salary, and I brought it up, and it was funny, like the moment he cracked a smile when he said a number. I'm like, and now you know where you're supposed to be at. You know what I mean? Like, we were playing around with, like, where do you feel comfortable? And it was so true. Like, when you throw out a number that's like ridiculous, it's ridiculous, but when you speak the numbers that you feel you're worth, you're like, yeah, like that.
A little bit,
right. Yeah.
To the point where you're just like, ooh,
right.
It's true. If we just ask for the number that we feel we're worth, there's a possibility we're not going to get that. And that's because negotiation is real. That's because there are now salary bands. Thank God for salary bands, because in essence, and they help us, right? I mean, that's important that there's salary bands. But that being said, if we don't ask for a little bit more than we're comfortable with, we're not going to get it.
Right.
I have a very big saying, which will be on here at some point, but I feel like I'm the person who, when you go to a restaurant, if you don't ask for the table at the front of the room, I think I might have shared this for a minute when we were on that call last time, but if you don't ask for the table at the front of the room or where you want to be, you're going to be at the bathroom. I mean, there's a good chance you'll be at the bathroom, a pretty good chance. And the reason that I say that is because they're smart enough, or they should be smart enough, if I owned a restaurant, to give every table to the person who didn't ask, unless they were regulars and like really come all the time, to the worst tables, like the tables that are like in the back, meaning back by like the bathroom. And I say that because they're waiting for me to walk in the room and say politely, may I please have that table? Because all those other people aren't asking, so they don't care. I care. Give me the table. I ask very nicely, very sweet, but I'm going to get that table because I asked for it. So think about that when you're asking for your money. If you don't ask, you're not going to get it. There's just no way. If you go to a hotel, it's the same thing. And I want you to use this with everything. Like, think about it, because it's your life. It's the way you experience the world around you. It's like, if you go to a hotel too, think about it. When you go to a hotel, if you don't ask for the room you want, or I always say, listen, they say, well, what size room do you want? Oh, I need a 1-bedroom room, a 1-bedroom suite, or whatever it may be, or I need just like if it's a suite hotel. Ma'am, I hate to bother you, but I want the room that you would want to give to your family if they were staying here. I make really nice with them, and I'm like really funny about it. And I'm like, this is going to sound crazy, but I want the room you would save if you was like a regular run of the room that you would give to like your best guest at that level. Because just make nice with everyone. And it's how you say it. It's how you tell your story. It's the story is not just your story, like your backstory. It's how you share who you are with people too. Okay, hold on one second. Sorry. And don't say you're sorry so much either. So you're going to do a lot of research. I want you to do the research. We talked about that. I think the research has to come from you too, how much you've earned. So I just want to say one thing, okay? When it came to research for me on my, I'm going to use coaching as an example because that was the easiest thing for me to come up with right now as far as it relates to like the uncomfortableness of it, because I never charged anyone for coaching. So it was like, well, how can I charge anything? And I just figured out what my hourly should be based upon what I earned in a year. So like my best year, I earned X. And then what would my hourly be based on that? Now, I would say that some people need to charge a little bit. You could have a sliding scale. You'll know who to talk to when you have that sliding scale. So for me, I had people that had been certified in my office. They were charging half of what I was charging. Why was I charging more? I had 20 some odd. Here's the thing. We're going back to Diana for a minute. I had 20 some odd years, almost 30 years of experience, not only running my own business, but also coaching people daily, or just life experience in job market, being, being somewhat of a, not in HR, but like being in that talent family, where I had to really communicate with people and understand what they were going through. And so using your career experience and figuring out, and it doesn't have to be at a job. It could be the value of working, like if you're working as a mother, right? Your organizational skills, all of your essential, your hard skills, and we don't want to call them soft skills, those essential needs that every human being needs to have. That's a teacher at NYU told me recently, that's a friend of the family. She goes, they're not soft skills, they're essential needs. We all need to be empathic. You can't take care of 2 children, 3 children, 1 child, unless you manage personalities and emotions on a regular basis. And let's face it, we all have to have done this throughout our careers, okay? So it's recognizing your contribution to your team and your clients, whether they are little, big, medium, or small, okay? And what value do you add to your clients? What are they going to get from you that they're not going to get from someone else? What's that special sauce that you have? And I also think it's about just asking for it. And if people say no, then you go on the sliding scale. You don't start low and then go up. You start high and then you come down. My therapist recently, she's brand new to the industry. She came to me and said 100 to 150. If she would have said 250, I would have given her 150, because we're leaving insurance for her, and we don't need to leave insurance for her. And she is brand new, but I would have given her 50 more. And there's a part of me, like, if I wasn't running the household and wasn't doing all that stuff, that maybe I would have. But there's somebody else is going to give her 150 if she would have started that conversation differently. Definitely. So start your conversation differently. Recognize every single contribution that you've made to get you to where you are. Discover your true rate, again, through research. I'm going to say it over and over again. So talk to the community. So if, for example, if you're trying to figure out, and like, well, the coaching thing, I could have gone to other people within the thing, but I find that new coaches, for example, they were charging very little. They weren't charging enough. So as far as other industries go, you could go to like all different places to find out. You could go onto different Slack groups or people and see what they're at making. But I think really look to see what you feel you're worth. And I'm more than happy for everyone to call me. I'm happy to do a negotiation, like a quick consult with anyone that needs one. I find it to be the easiest. For me, it's very easy to coach people in negotiations and in asking what your worth is, because again, if you start with what you really want to be making and then you break it down hourly, I think it's really, you know, if you're an hourly person, and again, asking for what, if you find a bunch of advisors within your industry, so I want you to think of one person within the industry you're in, 2, 3 at most, just like you did with your cheerleaders. And I want you to reach out to them, make it a homework assignment that you reach out to someone and ask them, like, can I ask you what you think the market would pay X, Y, and Z? Because now I know what all these coaches are asking for, because I did that. I reached out to people. I saw what they were charging. I know what this one was charging. And I was like, that's all you're charging? Why? Why are you not charging more? There's no reason not to. And it's much easier said than done. I know it. For all of you, it's much easier said than done. But if we don't have the conversation enough times with ourselves, we're not going to be bold enough to ask for it when the time comes. So there's different things people you can go to. There's people like me, which is, you know, that's fine. You could totally go like the recruiters, me, the connector, me. If you see a job, like I'm happy to be of service to any of you. Recently, I was thinking about alumni. That's another place to go to. Thinking about your future self and what you need to be making in X amount of years is another way to evaluate what it is that you need to be making now. So let's say you want to be making 150 or 250 at some point, whether it's an hourly or a salary. You need to start thinking about that now, but use your future self as an idea to get yourself there. Okay, if I start here and a little increments every 2 to 3 years, then I could do that. And also you could build up. I find you're so much better than you realize that people are going to pay you a lot more than you realize, because if you don't ask, you don't get again. So again, the experts are going to be key here. They're so, so important. Refer back to your evidence. Go back to those accomplishments constantly. So testimonials from your colleagues and clients, because when you start going through this money story and you start going through, what do I worth? I don't feel like I'm worth enough. No, you know what? I only have a year doing this, or I only have this much, blah, blah, blah. That whole story, that saboteur coming in, go back to all the things that we talked about. It's for a reason. I did all this to lead up to this moment in time. All those things are going to play a part. And you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for everyone who comes after you. That's so important. Like when I asked for what I asked for, I thought of like the other woman in the room, because it really builds us up, and it gave me confidence to say, okay, well, I'm going to ask for this because somebody else is going to ask for it. And I have to make sure that everybody else, we all stand together and make sure that it comes ahead, because little by little, I have heard over the years, the amounts of people that were not paid at the same amount. Yeah. Paving, there's plenty. Here, let me just read some of these for everyone. There's plenty for being first, but it opens doors for women. Our kids behind us. So true. Yes, paving the way for the other women in the room. It is so important that we do this for the next person. So when you feel insecure, or you're having a moment where you're like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not comfortable asking for this, whether it's to be at a CEO, regional CEO at a so-and-so company, or it's to be, as we were talking, sorry, Julie, I keep putting you on the spot, as a coach or whatever it may be, I'm telling you, if you think about it, have that other person as opposed to your saboteur, it will help you go ahead. Okay. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's going to be very uncomfortable as you go through this, right? It's really, truly uncomfortable. I always think keep humility with you at all times. You can't be listening if you're speaking. So let them speak, let them say what they have to say. So when you're in a negotiation stage, or when you're trying to figure out what kind of money you need, just let other people kind of make that conversation. If someone says to you, How much are you? Well, to be honest with you, I'm really interested in the opportunity. I was wondering, and people did it to me all week this week. I wanted to know what they were making. I can't ask what they're making, but I wanted to know what their worth was. One helpful tip, do not fill the silence once you've made the ask. Yes, do not fill it. Exactly. That's such great advice. I feel like I keep asking people, what's that first number that you want to be making? And they'll say, well, tell me what the job is looking for. And and then I'm like, you know what, let's just send you. And if they're interested, we'll get to the money when we get to the money. Like, and that's a chance that they're willing to take, but I think they're better off not putting that number in first. So I say, let them pave that money situation for you. You don't want to go so far with places like if it's a different organization, or again, you're a solo company, a solo company, you have your set of, hourly that you charge, or your rates. If you charge like for a 6-month package or a 3-month package, things like that you're doing, that's different. Like we created a coaching package that was for organizations, it was this much. For individuals, it was this much, because if the organization was going to be paying, it was also that it was going to be paying for more hours, so that we were able to, more hours, we were charging more. For the individuals, they weren't able to take on that much. So it really depended. And don't jump to conclusions. And also just remember, like, put yourself in other people's shoes. It will help you. You don't have to sit in their shoes. You don't have to stay there too long. But I highly recommend just try for a minute that the person you're dealing with may not be the person holding the pocketbook. So just, and the person holding the pocketbook too sometimes has a lot of stress and we have to find empathy for everyone in the room, even when it's a person that it makes it really hard to find empathy for. Because when we find empathy for them, the room settles in a little bit. And I think that you come at it from a different lens also. So just listen to their point of view. Try not to react, because that reaction, it just can bring out some part of us. Even if we think we're not that person, our facial expressions or something, or body language could definitely do that. So I've shared that.
Hillary, we have a good question in the chat. It says, I get pressed often to provide a number. An HR lead just told me, we'll need a number before we get too far into the process. How would you suggest handling this?
I think if they're pressing for a number, they really need one. Like, there are certain jobs that I work on, Diana, where I know that they're not going to go over a certain amount of money. And most of the jobs I work on now are executive level roles. So they start at around a certain amount and they can go as high as up, but some of them have a salary band. And when that happens, I think that it's okay for you to say, what I usually do is I say things like, I've made as much as X and I'm really looking to be making Y. That way you're not necessarily giving the actual number you made. You're giving them a number, like the high end of your number. But I think it's okay to say, I'm due for a raise. I'm actually due for a review this week. If you are, or I'm due, because a lot of people, it's review season right now. So I think that if you're due for a review or a raise right now, considering that's what the season is, that's something else that you could mention inside of your remarks, to say, you know what, I'm hesitant to say only because while I've made as much as X and I'm looking for more, I am going through a review season right now, and I just wanted to keep it open because I'm interested in this opportunity. But you could also, Diana, you could contact me offline, and I'm happy to work on that with you. Any other questions? If asked, I point out that comp isn't just salary, and ask for what the total picture entails. Exactly. Like, what does total comp entail is really important. Is that stock options? Is it, is there a bonus? Is the bonus guaranteed? Is it not? How long do you have to wait until you get full compensation? Is it fully vested after X or Y? How much of their benefits is compensated? I have to say, like, I feel like a weight has been lifted since I've joined WPP. Like, for me, it's like, it's huge. Like, I feel so taken care of. As a small business owner, I was paying a lot of money. And now I feel like my family is really taken care of in a way, especially as a cancer survivor. It's just made a huge impact in our lives. So for that, it's been remarkable. And I think that things like that, people forget. Some companies pay 50%. But here's another thing. If a company pays 50%, The other thing that you could do is you could say to them, is there a way to open up they might not do this. Thank you, Francine. You may not do this, but they may do a special HSA for you. I had a company once, and it wasn't a small private company, a small owned company. But what you could do is say, can you open up an HSA for me to compensate for the 50 to 80%? So I was at 80% and now I'm coming to 50%. And, can you give me X amount of dollars in an HSA to cover that for me? Because they can possibly do that. Whereas they're not able to give you more on the insurance because it's actually regulated through their insurance company and the amount of people that they have. So, and I only know this as a small, I see my HR person like, yes, Julie's like, yes. So, but I learned that, and a company was smart enough to say, hey, let's give them. And then the other person didn't have children, and how were they going to compensate her? So they had to get creative in compensating the family of 2 versus the family of 4. So don't think such a great thing that you brought up, Amy, is that we can't think inside the box. We have to really go outside of that box and think of all the things that you spend your money on in any given year. Talk about this. It's so important. I don't think we have a problem with anybody here, but I just want to say, like, make sure at any given time, if you're feeling resentful or you're feeling frustrated, just like keep that checked. Humble pie, humble pie. So, and take a step back. Are you envisioning the outcome that you desire, right? Is it aligned with the goals and the skills that highlight your true worth? Because ask yourself, like, do I really want this? Think about what I think about when I used to date. Do I want to go on this date? Like, do I want to go on this date? I was always worried. Do they like me? Do they like me? No. Do I like them? Do I want to be where they are? Do I like what they're doing? We have to start to think about that a little bit more. Are we coming at it from a place of need or a desire, right? Or a place of want? And how much of that is really telling in our story, and how much of that is old? Like, is that old Hillary speaking? She really always wants to make sure everybody likes her, or does she really want this? And this is the thing that I was saying earlier, that if you don't ask, you're never going to get. So, make sure that you ask. Okay, I think that is it. Hold on one second. Oh, okay. Know when to gratefully walk away, right? And it's okay to say, no, thank you. And we talked about that before. If it's not aligned with your values, we do a whole nother workshop about aligning your career values with the job that you want. And I think that what's so important is we keep coming at things, wondering whether or not, like, feeling like, because our story is riddled with, not everyone's story is riddled with as much, but because it's riddled with these feelings that make us think that we're not worthy, maybe, or we don't have that many years doing what the job requirement is, or blah, 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 all those things. We start to lose track of what it is that we really want. And in doing so, we have to know that, like, just because they're offering us, and we just talked about it in the slide before, but I'm going to reiterate it again, just because they're offering us something, it doesn't mean that that's what we necessarily have to take. Okay. We have to really think about and aligning ourselves with what it is that's going to, and again, may sound corny, but so true, what's going to give us joy, and what's going to give us pleasure, and whatever that is, so that we're not questioning it all the time and every day. So just a quote, and this is, like, important to me because I hold true to this in many things, because I feel like we're scared sometimes about a lot of things that we want to do and we want to accomplish, but who was it that said, we do hard things, right? So I think that, we really have to do hard things, and hard things are, like, in spite of what our story is, or what our story what we tell ourselves our story is, because that's two different things. What our actual story is and what we tell ourselves our story is are two different things. And what Francine said earlier, which I think was important, is like knowing the narrative and and I think auto-correcting the narrative, I think, is a really important thing, and making sure that we're consistent on it. So that's it. I'm grateful for everyone listening and being okay with my, you know, my problems, my notes. I went without notes today, and I hope all went okay.
Well, if that was you without notes, wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. You're so real. You make it all just seem so attainable and so, gosh, that vulnerability. I mean, everything comes back to Brene Brown for me, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
You know,
I know, and I love her.
Victories and just being authentic, you know?
Yes.
Exactly. I love it.
And Julie, I want to take, first of all, Francine, thank you for saying that, because it all leads up to this for a purpose. Do you know that I am about to try to find out if we could take workshops to do Dare to Lead? I want to be a DTL workshop lead person. So I'm trying to do that. I want to, yeah, she is just incredible. So the vulnerability is it. And I was born with a lot of it, and it's been fortunate, and also has gotten me into a lot of trouble, but God knows it has led up to some beautiful things. So that's, it works in this space, that's for certain. So thank you.
You know,
Thank
you
so
said a
much.
lot of really amazing things, a lot of really fantastic takeaways. One thing you mentioned very, very quickly in passing in the beginning, you referred to yourself as a cancer thriver. And I just want to say it's the first time I've heard that. And I think there's so much power that you put in that, calling yourself a thriver through that. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you're able to say that, and that the experience only made you stronger. And very, very, I love you're flipping the switch, you're owning it. It's incredible.
I thank you for that. I heard that actually by somebody who is a lot of I was stage 3, and a lot of stage 4 people. I don't like, for me, a survivor means that my mom, who passed from cancer, means that she wasn't a survivor. I have a hard time with the word. So I feel like I'm healthy, I'm alive. I thrive every day. I feel like we're all thrivers in our own way. So for me, it was a way, to your point, I flipped the tape. I couldn't survive. It was negative for me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions before we go? No? Okay.
I've shared Hillary's LinkedIn on the chat for all of you to reach out.
I'll give my email address so that if you have questions about, I'm just going to put it in the chat, because I find that the LinkedIn, if I don't get back in time, I feel bad. So there you go. And you should all, if you can all feel comfortable enough sharing your own LinkedIns right now before we go, so that you could be your own community of support to each other. Is that okay with everyone? I mean, I know you have Connect for Women, and I know that's there, but like as your own special group that you got on today, is that okay if I recommend that?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Because everybody needs a squad, I feel like.
Absolutely. And it's, having multiple squads, to your point about, the different avenues, like the mentors and that in different categories in your life, right? I think I've learned as I've gotten older, there's different people that hold different places in your life. Yes. And that's okay, and having a network in each, and having a squad essentially in each is really important, because we're all very multidimensional people, right? I find that every time I define something in myself, I'm limiting myself. And so keeping that open is really been beneficial for me.
100%. And it is a hard thing to realize as you get older, that you can't go to every single person for everything, but that there are certain people, there are some people who are just absolutely astonishing and amazing at giving us the support we need when we need it. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm really grateful.
Thank you, Hillary. This was great.
It was incredible. Thanks, Hill.
Thank you. Bye.
I just wanted to also let you know, Connect for Women is also having another session on Wednesday,